In this video, we're going to perform an approach, missed approach procedure into a hold, and demonstrate this in the Challenger 650, the aircraft I am using here. Okay, and hopefully the audio is coming through okay. Getting it configured is sometimes a challenge. So, going to take off on runway 5. We are at Saginaw, Michigan, Mike Bravo Sierra, MBS. I am going to do a couple of final things here. Get both the pilot flying and the pilot monitorings PFDs set with the nav source set up properly, and the format. Okay, we'll go ahead and taxi into position. Get her into position. Sync heading. Arm toga. Start our takeoff roll. Slow progression of the throttles. ATS active. There's in one hold. Rotating, positive rate, gear, VT +5, flaps, autopilot, and doing a sync down. Heading mode. Already up to 200. Doesn't take long for this jet. Altitude, excuse me, altitude target 3000. After takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. Landing gear. Up. Flaps. 0. Thrust reversers. Off. Ignition. Off. Pressurization. Checked. PAX transition. Completed. N1. Climb set. APU generator. Off. APU. Shut down. Passenger signs. CAS. After takeoff checklist complete.
I just did a direct to Tulpe, which is the initial fix for ILS 23 here at Saginaw. I'm going outbound on that approach course right now. And I did a direct to Tulpe with a intercept course of 233. And in just a second we will do a vectored procedure turn, so to speak, to come back in and intercept the approach, the localizer.
Descent checklist. Shoulder harness. Passenger signs. Pressurization. Fuel quantity and balance.
Looks good.
FMS, landing data, charts.
Got it.
Approach briefing.
Done.
BNAV transition flight level.
Set.
Descent checklist complete. In range checklist next.
Starting in range, and I'm going to start my procedure turn.
In range checklist. APU. Started. Altimeters. Avionics.
Set.
External lights. On. N1 target.
Setting to take off.
Set. APU PAX transition. Avail completed. APU generator. On. CAS. In range checklist complete. Before landing checklist next.
I didn't get the course intercept extension that I was anticipating. I'm going to do a direct. Tulpe 233 intercept course. There we go. Now we can see it. Okay. All right. We will momentarily start our turn back in by left hand 180. Since we're going to be on heading mode, we'll go ahead and proactively adjust my altitude down to 2,500 because that's the missed approach procedure altitude, which is climb to 2,500 outbound on MBS 230. Radial, which is pretty much the direction we're going to be going with our ILS approach, which is close to that 233. And proceed outbound on the 230 to K-word, fix DME 6.1, and hold. Okay, so we're going to start our left turn, back in, intercept the localizer and perform the approach, attempt the approach. In the interest of time for this video, I'm going to keep the speeds up to a degree. Hopefully it doesn't get me in trouble. So we finished the in-range checklist. The next checklist is going to be the before landing checklist, which initiates right after dropping the gear. So you can see we are coming in on an intercept course. Two, 3, 275. So just a little over 40 degrees right now. Arming approach. So now I've got it at 30 degree intercept, 263 for the 233 approach course. You can see our airport runway right here, if you can see my mouse pointer, just off 11 o'clock, 11:30. So we're still up at 200. Once we're established on the localizer and get the Tulpe, then I'll drop it down. things are going to happen really fast here. This is not easy. It takes a lot of practice, and then if you don't practice, you can lose it. It's like mental muscle memory. Okay, we've got the localizer turning in. We've got 3.3 to Tulpe. We'll hit the glide slope as we're just getting to or slightly after Tulpe. You can actually see the TOD, top of descent, just slightly after Tulpe here. So again, we proactively got our target altitude set for 2,500 for the missed approach procedure. I'm gonna go ahead and give her 1 notch of flaps and bring her down to 180. Almost to Tulpe. I'll wait till,
25.
so Tulpe's our initial fix. Okay, we're past Tulpe, 2.3 to Wasi. I'm going to 30 degrees flaps, 160. You can see our airport right in front of us, our runway. Again, this is ILS 23. Down to 45. And 150. Let me get my approach performance. 250 and 8 and 28. Send. Gear down before landing checklist.
Landing gear lever. Down indicating. Nose steer. Arm centered clear. Anti-skid. Armed tested. Passenger signs. On. Wing cowl anti-ice.
Not required.
Continuous ignition. On. Thrust reversers. Armed. Spoilers. Stowed auto. Flaps. Set. CAS.
1,000.
Looks
Before
good.
landing checklist complete. After landing checklist next.
Okay, we're on a 2-mile final. Stabilized at about 900 to 1,000 feet above ground, which is what we wanted. Drop in AP now. Please do not expect perfection. This is not easy. Takes again a lot of practice.
500.
A lot of practice. .870 Barrow is our decision altitude.
Minimums.
Okay, I'm hitting both TOGA and ATS disconnect. Gear flaps up to 20. Gear up. Okay, flaps up. AP. Nav source back to FMS. Go to nav mode. Pulling the throttle back to about 200, adjust ATS target. Activate ATS. And we're on nav mode, heading to the missed approach. Going to deactivate thrust reversers. And because we had preset the 2,500, we're at the right altitude. As we activated AP and autopilot and nav, it's got us flying the altitude. We got ATS at 200, our speed, and coming into the hold, as you can see at K-word. And we have a little bit of rain hitting us now. We'll have a teardrop entry. There we go. Turning 30 degrees. The flight management system and the flight computer is doing that. For the teardrop. And so a couple of mentions. Were we to go back and reshoot the approach, the ILS approach, and want to have ourselves set up for a nav-to-nav transfer, meaning as we would be approaching in, if we want the approach to be armed and to intercept the localizer properly and do the nav-to-nav transfer to switch from FMS over to localizer, we have to have both the pilot flying, the PF, and the pilot monitoring, the PM, which would be PFD2 here, both adjusted, which I did as part of that missed approach procedure, both adjusted back to FMS. If I had only done the PFD1 and PFD2 was still on the green and the localizer as the nav source, then the approach would not capture properly. Both have to be on FMS, just to make mention of that, something we learned. I think we're getting pretty close to the plane turning itself back in. We'll make sure that happens here. Yep, there she goes. Just turning back in to get set up for the left-hand turns for the standard approach pattern. So I'm trying to think any other comments I wanted to make about that. I think that's pretty much going to be it. Again, there is a lot going on there. Key things that it took me a lot of practice to learn is the gotchas as part of the miss approach are, you're so focused on doing things that you can forget when you switched off of ATS onto flying and controlling the speed with the throttles, which is a mandatory requirement in the flight operations manual for this aircraft. You can very quickly get up to your target speed, and you can exceed it very quickly because you're focused on other things like getting the nav source set up and getting AP turned on and then nav, and you can just basically blow through your target speed. You have to be very careful. I mean, the key thing is remember to fly the plane. Fly the plane first, and that includes speed, the throttle when you're off of ATS. Don't become so dependent on ATS to where you know, you're not naturally paying close attention to the speed as part of flying with the throttles manually. That's a got you. And then switching the nav sources, both nav sources, PFD1 and PFD2, as I mentioned, also is a got you for the subsequent approach attempt. And I think the other thing is, so if we were going to go back and reshoot the approach, we would basically, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. We're right now on nav, so I can't do a direct and then a previous and go back to start the setting up the approach again, because I'm currently on nav and the system's flying this holding pattern. However, what I can do is I can go to departure and approach, and I can go and set up for ILS 23 vectors, and I can execute that. And it's still performing within the context of this missed approach. I can then exit the hold if I choose to, and then at that point it's time to configure either vectors via heading mode or to go direct, but in reality it would be vectors. So anyway, hopefully that is of value as a demonstration, and we will stop the video at this point and welcome any comments. And again, I'm not a polished video guy nor a polished Challenger 650 sim pilot, but it just takes a lot of practice. But I hope that's of value to the community. Thanks.